I woke up in a cramped hotel room, still completely drunk. That was the first shocking fact. The second was that I was still in my suit, shoes on, tie loose, shirt half unbuttoned. My head pounded as though someone inside was hammering to get out. Sunlight trickled in through the narrow blinds, slicing across my eyes and making it impossible to look. I groaned, shutting my lids again, replaying the night in my mind. I realized with a wave of dread that the other half of the bed was empty. My wife Lillian was gone. For a moment, confusion swirled. Did she step out for coffee, rummaging through vending machines? Did she go down to breakfast? But the more I tried to open my eyes and push aside the splitting hangover, the more I noticed the bed's covers on her side were basically untouched. A couple faint wrinkles from where I remembered us collapsing onto it the night before, drunk and giggly. And yet, she clearly hadn't stayed. A prickle of fear. Where is she? My mind raced, rummaging for clues through a haze of alcohol. The last coherent memory I had was from that wild party we crashed. The concept was so out of character for us. Lillian and I had come to Hutchinson Heights, some middle of nowhere place in southern Colorado, for a weekend friend's wedding. Or at least that was the initial plan. Then we got word about a huge get-together at a fancy private lodge not far from the wedding site. Lillian, curious and bored with the small-town wedding vibe, persuaded me to check it out with her. We went, we drank, we danced, and I guess we parted ways in that massive crowd. The next real moment I remember with clarity was stumbling. I forced my body upright, ignoring the protest of every muscle. The clock read 10:14 a.m. My phone sat on the nightstand. I grabbed it, squinting at the screen. 10 missed calls, some from unknown numbers. Some from her, some from my in-laws, plus a few texts. I tapped open Lillian's messages, only to find nothing but a single call me from 9:06 a.m. She hadn't texted since. Why didn't she pick up the phone? I tried calling her last night. Then I realized I'd never actually called her. My swirling memory was messing with me. I tried calling now. Me on phone. Pick up. Pick up, Lil. Voicemail. Lillian's recorded voice. Hey. You've reached Lil. Leave a message. I hung up, tried again, same result. My heart pounded. Did something terrible happen? Or was she just ignoring me? Scrambling for answers, I recalled how hammered I'd been. Possibly we'd checked in here, and I blacked out. Maybe she changed her mind, went to a friend's room. My hand shook slightly from the hangover and from fear. I decided to calm down and do something practical. Check the front desk or ask the motel staff. I scooped water from the bathroom sink, rinsing my face. A glance in the mirror showed a man disheveled, eyes bloodshot, hair matted from a sweaty pillow. I quickly splashed more water. Get it together, I mumbled. Then I grabbed my phone, wallet, the room key, and left for the motel lobby. In the worn-out motel lobby, a tired-looking clerk gave me a side glance. I forced a polite smile. Me, good morning. I'm in room 207. I out. Can't seem to find my wife. We checked in last night. Did you see us come in together? He frowned, punched something into the computer, and gave me a sympathetic but confused look. Clerk, I can look at the security feed, I guess, but from what I recall, you arrived alone, sir. I insisted that was impossible. Lillian must have arrived with me. He suggested we check the camera footage. So we went into a small back office where the clerk rewound the footage from last night. Clerk pointing at the screen. That's you at about 3:12 a.m., stumbling in alone. My stomach sank. Indeed, there I was weaving unsteadily across the lobby, no sign of Lillian. I watched as the me on the screen grabbed the elevator, but changed my mind going up the stairs, nearly tripping and disappearing from frame. Me, turning pale, so she never walked in with me. He shook his head. I let out a trembling breath, trying to decide if this was better or worse than the alternative. If she didn't come in with me, where did she go? Then an idea struck. What if she arrived later? Could you keep playing the footage? Maybe she showed up after me. The clerk obliged, fast-forwarding. And lo and behold, about 3:25 a.m. in came Lillian, but she was pulling some guy by the tie, giggling, heading straight to the elevator. My breath caught. She looked very intoxicated, and he looked cocky, tall, wearing a sport coat that was half undone. They were leaning into each other, and I had to watch them vanish from the frame. Clerk hesitant. So that's your wife, right? I nodded numbly. Yes, that's definitely her. My mind reeled. She hadn't come with me at all, but with another man, using the same motel, Realizing I was on camera, tears in my eyes, I coughed, trying to compose myself. Then I spoke. Me, I need you to tell me which room they got. I need to talk to her right now. Clerk, sir, we can't disclose guest information. It's policy. I'm sorry. I grew furious, raising my voice. That's my wife, for God's sake. She's with some random man. Doesn't that concern you? The clerk picked up the phone, apparently contacting management or security. I realized I was making a scene. Clerk, calm down, or I'll have to call the police. I'm sorry, but I can't give you their room number. Without thinking, I spun around and darted out of the office. The motel wasn't large. 3 floors, maybe 30 rooms total. Something in me snapped. I would find them. If Lillian wouldn't pick up, if the clerk refused to help, I'd do it the messy way. I sprinted up the stairs, ignoring the clerk's shouts. My heart hammered. The second-floor hallway had half a dozen rooms. I started banging on doors, yelling, Lillian, I must have looked insane. Some doors opened, revealing bewildered travelers. I apologized quickly, explaining, sorry, wrong room, and moved on. Down the hall, near room 213, I heard a familiar laugh. My wife's voice. Indescribable relief and anger flooded me simultaneously. I pounded on the door, yelling, Lillian, open up. No one responded. My chest felt like it was about to explode. I know you're in there. Come out. The door remained locked, silent now. That only fueled my anger further. With all the strength I had, I tried ramming the door. It wouldn't budge. I kicked it. Threw my shoulder into it, cursing. The only result was a bruised side and a throbbing foot. In the distance, I heard sirens. Great, the clerk must have called the cops. But I didn't care. I was beyond reason. Lillian, my wife, was in there with that scumbag. I wanted answers to see it for myself. I battered the door again, and that's when I felt a sharp blow in my shoulder. A police officer tackled me from behind, pinning me against the wall. Another policeman arrived, securing my wrists. I hollered, that's my wife inside, some guys with her. She's drunk. But they forcibly restrained me, telling me to calm down. My vision blurred from rage and tears. Officer, sir, you need to step back. We're taking you in for disorderly conduct. They marched me away from the hallway. Looking back over my shoulder, I saw the door to 213 crack open slightly and Lillian's frightened face peeking out. Tears in her eyes. Then the door shut. My heart shattered into a million pieces. They dragged me to the station, threw me in a holding cell for the night. No one believed my story about my wife hooking up with a random man. They only saw a crazy drunk guy destroying motel property. Sometime during the early morning hours, I must have sobered up, slumped on a bench, emotions raw, feeling the hangover in full force. I kept repeating to the officer on duty, she's my wife. She's in that room. I just wanted to talk to her, but they told me it didn't matter. The motel had pressed charges for attempted destruction of property. Next day around noon, I was bailed out, and ironically, it was Lillian who showed up, paying the fine. She looked disheveled, makeup smudged from crying, wearing the same dress from the night before. We didn't hug or anything. We just stared at each other across the police station front desk. She had tears but forced calm, while I seethed with heartbreak and anger. Lillian, let's go outside. I followed silently. My mind churned with words, accusations, demands for explanations. But all that came out was, me? Where did you go? Why that man? Do you realize what he put me through? She inhaled, shaky, replying, I swear, it was nothing. I lost track of you at that party. I was hammered. I ended up going with him to the motel. Malcolm, we didn't do anything. I blacked out. Nothing happened. Me, nothing happened. You dragged him upstairs. The clerk's camera showed you giggling, practically kissing in the lobby. Stop lying. She tried to tape my hand, but I jerked away. The officer outside cast us an annoyed glance, so we tried not to raise our voices. Lillian, can we please talk at home? I promise there's an explanation. I messed up. I got carried away with the fun, and that jerk took advantage. I blacked out. Malcolm, I never wanted to betray you. Me, and I'm supposed to just believe that. He was in your room, Lil, for hours while you locked the door. Then you vanished, leaving me to get arrested. This is insane. My rage bubbled. Another officer approached, basically telling us we had to leave the station. So we drove back to our house in tense silence. You got in her car, I got in mine. The entire ride, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, seeing her follow. A piece of me hoped it was all a misunderstanding, but the footage replayed in my head. When we arrived home, I demanded answers again. She insisted that, yes, she was drunk. She felt lonely. The party felt exciting, and in her intoxicated mind, she thought the guy was just giving her a ride, maybe flirting. She said she semi-blacked out. She didn't recall everything. So, was there sex or not? She insisted no, absolutely not. I woke up near dawn, realized I was with him, got out. He was asleep. Nothing else. The tears spilled down her cheeks. She claimed everything was innocent, but who'd believe that? The camera showed them close. She was leading him by the tide, for God's sake. For a few days, we lived like strangers under the same roof. I asked her again and again, tell me the truth. Did you sleep with him? Each time, she cried. No, no, I swear. Meanwhile, my anger festered. The scene from the motel, the phone call from the cops, the clerk's refusal to give me their room number, the door locked, her face peering out, all hammered me with doubt. I couldn't accept her innocence. I tried to bury the pain in alcohol. Late nights, I'd come home from work. My job had grown extra stressful because word spread that I'd been arrested for going crazy in a motel. My boss gave me a stern talk. Our daughter, Megan, only 6 at the time, kept me grounded. She was the reason I held back from screaming at Lillian daily. The child didn't deserve to see such fights, but my home, which used to be a haven of love and trust, felt like a battlefield with silent, simmering tension. Weeks turned into months. People say time heals, but it only seemed to create a bitter distance. Lillian tried to apologize, tried to act more loving. She'd make my favorite dinners, approach me in bed at night. But I resented her touch, suspecting she'd been with another man. The nights I forced myself to be intimate felt empty. I loathed myself afterwards, as though I was punishing her or using her. Then I'd get up, wander the house, sometimes ending up in the garage to vent my frustration. Eventually, and it took almost a year, I caved. I ended up hooking up with a friend from my old workplace. I was drunk, feeling worthless, and wanted to lash out at Lillian by stooping to the same betrayal. The next morning, I stared at my reflection in this other woman's bathroom mirror, feeling disgusted with myself. I realized that, ironically, I was just continuing the spiral. Cheating back didn't fix anything. It only made me feel more vile, carrying guilt on top of heartbreak. Lillian apparently suspected. She saw changes in me, how I came home late, the smell of a different perfume lingering. She wept quietly but didn't dare confront me. Maybe she thought she deserved it. Maybe she was too broken to fight. The atmosphere was suffocating. Our daughter recognized something was very wrong. She grew clingy, not wanting me out of her sight. That guilt was too heavy. One night, after tucking Megan in, I found Lillian in the living room, lights off, tears running down her face. We had a painfully honest talk for the first time in months. She repeated her claim. I swear I didn't actually cheat. I was hammered. I led him to that room, but once inside, I passed out. He didn't do anything, or if he tried, I have no recollection. I left at dawn, realized how messed up it was, but was too embarrassed to face you. I couldn't tell if she was lying or if there was a chance it was true. The footage was incriminating, but it only showed them going to the room, not what happened inside. The question of divorce loomed. We functioned in a dreadful limbo. I didn't file official papers, but I was effectively living as though the marriage was on hold. I keep seeing Megan, focusing on her, ignoring the tension of Lillian. She tried to fix things, apologized 1,000 times, offered to see a therapist to let me track her phone. It all felt like too little too late. A year after the motel incident, not much had changed. We still lived in the same house, ironically maintaining an outward facade of normalcy for our daughter. My anger had burned itself into a numb bitterness. Her apologetic attitude melted into a sort of depressed acceptance. She no longer hosted parties, never went out at night except for groceries or errands. I'd see her hunched over the living room sofa, scrolling job listings as if searching for a new identity. At times I pitied her. At times I hated her. At times I hated myself. The sadness was deep, overshadowing every moment. Megan was about 7 by then, blossoming in school, but obviously aware that mommy and daddy are not as loving. She'd come to me with sad eyes, wanting reassurance. I'd give it, but inside I felt lost. I'd catch glimpses of Lillian crying in the kitchen or staring at old photos. She'd approach me softly, Mal, please talk to me. But I'd walk away. My mother visited once, saw the tension, and said, "Son, you either fix your marriage or free yourselves. You can't keep living in purgatory." She was right, but I was too locked in resentment to decide. Meanwhile, ironically, Lillian's motel man had vanished from the picture. She told me once that he was just a random from that huge party, no real friend. She insisted he tried texting me a week after, but I blocked him. I only half believed it. Yet I had no proof she was still in contact. Maybe she truly had cut him off. But the damage was done. She had brought him up to that room, or so the camera showed. Maybe they had sex, maybe not. The deeper betrayal was that she'd run from me afterwards and let me get arrested. Months passed. Then, one morning, I woke up with an odd clarity. My heartbreak, my attempt to cheat back. The mutual resentment, it was all a swirling mess. The only stable factor was Megan. She was older, more perceptive, asking me carefully, "Dad, are you going to leave Mom?" I couldn't lie to her. "I don't know," I answered. And that day, I decided to press Lillian for a final resolution. I cornered her in the living room after Megan went to a neighbor's for a play date. My voice was steady but urgent. "We can't keep living like this. Either we break or we try, really try, to move forward. But I'm done with this silent tension." She swallowed, face pale, tears pooling. She said she wanted to try. She insisted I'd always been the only one for her, that that night was a drunken fiasco. She said she understood I'd doubted her. She'd offered couples counseling again. I'd exhaled, feeling my chest lighten a bit. Part of me was done with the marriage, but part of me wanted to see if therapy might help. We gave it a shot, therapy sessions weekly. We slowly aired out the darkness. I admitted my meltdown at the motel. She recounted feeling worthless, overshadowed by my academic life. The therapist hammered home the concept of open communication, explaining that we'd let resentment and suspicion build. There were times I felt hopeful, times I wanted to fling my wedding ring in the trash. Lillian remained consistent, that she was innocent of actual sex with that man. But she admitted to an emotional betrayal by leading him on and humiliating me in the process. Eventually, I found some measure of acceptance, though the entire year following the motel fiasco felt like a blur of tears, arguments, quiet dinners, and therapy breakthroughs. No neat resolution, we existed in a gray area. She tried proving her faithfulness, cooking me dinners, remembering anniversaries. I teetered between apathy and reluctant gratitude. A second affair never manifested, nor did any real passion on my side. We just drifted, partially trying, partially numb. So we remain. Lillian lives in the same house. Megan is now 8. The question of divorce still haunts me daily. Some nights, I feel we can never recapture what was lost. Other nights, I see glimpses of the loving Lillian I married, and I wonder if we can survive. The climate in our home is subdued. I rarely do anything romantic. She looks regretful, but doesn't push too hard. We go about daily tasks, share finances, handle Megan's schooling. Outsiders might see a normal family, but inside, we both feel the fracture. Though not as dramatic as some stories, it's a painful reality. One drunken night at a motel, Lillian's mysterious disappearance, a confrontation with police, and a year of half-hearted attempts at reconciliation. Did she truly cheat fully? I might never know. Some part of me suspects yes. Another part wants to trust her blackout story. My own guilt for hooking up with an acquaintance in retaliation complicates my moral high ground. At present, I'm balancing precariously, uncertain if or when we'll file final divorce papers. I have them prepared, but I haven't submitted them. Lillian tries to show me she's changed. I remain wary. We both might be clinging to illusions, or perhaps we truly want to protect Megan from the trauma of divorce. In any event, the question lingers: how long can we keep this half-life going? In my final words, I suppose the moral is that betrayal, even if uncertain, can hollow out a marriage from within. Suspicions can become their own brand of poison, and the story of a single drunken night that led me to a hotel corridor, pounding on random doors, culminating in my arrest, is evidence of how quickly trust can unravel. The child we share is the only reason we maintain this precarious status, whether it is enough to salvage the marriage or not. Time alone will tell. For now, we exist in uneasy cohabitation with divorce papers ready to sign but left in a drawer. Perhaps someday soon I'll find the courage or clarity to finalize them. Until then, we keep living in the same house, sharing occasional smiles, more often sharing regrets. It's not the life I'd have ever chosen, but it's the reality I face. And that is how I woke up drunk in a motel, found my wife gone, and ended up here in this strange limbo like existence we call a marriage.